Welcome to the Legally Ever After Real Estate Podcast, where we help you build, protect, and pass on your assets. I'm your host, estate planning attorney Pamela Moss-Garrett. Let's get started. Today we have Justin Cooper from Pine Financial Group, and he's going to be talking to us about hard money tips. Welcome, Justin.
Well, hi. Thanks, Pam. Appreciate being on today.
We are so excited to have you. And for people who are listening who are newer to investing and flips, and they've kind of heard the term hard money, what kind of advice do you have kind of for those beginner investors when it comes to, working with a provider like you?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So what I usually like to do is back up even maybe a little further and just say, what even is hard money? Because I know when I was getting started, I had no idea what hard money was. So when I was trying to do my first fix and flip, I went straight after a conventional loan because I didn't even know something like hard money existed. So first off, hard money, I think is certainly a tool. It's not the end all be all for real estate investors, but it can be an amazing tool for real estate investors. Investors doing fix and flips, buying rental properties, building new construction, commercial investors. There's a time and a place for hard money and all of that stuff. And so the way I look at hard money is a short-term, high leverage loan. And so when I'm saying short-term, I'm talking months, not years, right? So truly short-term. And when I'm talking high leverage, that's where we're talking, the no money down type loans, where you might be able to borrow 100% of your purchase price, maybe 100% of the purchase price and some repair money, right? Some hard money lenders, Pine Financial, as one of them, can do 100% of the purchase price and 100% of the repairs and 100% of the closing costs, making that truly no money down deal. So of course, understanding your needs as an investor when you're approaching this and knowing what's available out there, that's when you can fine tune who should I be talking to, what deal do I need, what type of financing on, and that's when you can find out who the different lenders are, what their loans are, and of course, what's going to be the right fit for you.
Something that you said in the beginning of that, Justin, that was so helpful was, when you were first starting out, you did a conventional loan for a fix and flip. And can you share a little bit more about that experience, why that didn't work out so well, and what you learned kind of switching over to using these types of loan products?
Yeah. So that was back in 2007. So way back, it was in the middle of that downturn, or just as we were getting started in that downturn. It was my very first deal. I'd gone through a couple seminars. Nobody had mentioned hard money. And I thought I knew everything because, I'm fresh out of a 3-day seminar. So I'm going to be the best investor the world has ever seen. And I had a group of friends, maybe more of acquaintances, certainly not good friends yet, who were in the real estate industry. Some were agents, some had done some flips and some investing. And so I relied on them to help me find the deal. One was an agent, relied on them to help me find the right mortgage lender. And it was a conventional loan. And so back then what I had done was I got a 100% conventional loan. And so 100% conventional loan back then was where they would cover 100% of the purchase price. So to me, getting started, that was huge because I didn't have a lot of money. I hardly had any money. I had enough to be pre-approved to get into the deal. And then what I thought was going to be enough money to do the rehab, but I was completely clueless as to the amount of rehab. So, a lesson learned in that regard was, or I guess a point and counterpoint. I had a couple professionals in my corner helping me get into the project, but I didn't really have any professionals looking over my shoulder saying, this is going to be a good deal. They said, here's a property that needs repairs and could probably sell for more, right? That's what a real estate agent can do. And so, yes, this could be a potential fix and flip. And I had a mortgage lender saying, hey, I can get you a loan to cover the purchase price of the property. But nobody was looking at the ARV, the after repair value of the property. Okay. And that, of course, is what we could sell the fix and flip for after it's all fixed up and beautiful. So nobody looking over my shoulder in that regard. Nobody looking over my shoulder saying, well, what are the repairs you're going to do to this property? How much are you going to spend, or how much have you budgeted for this property? And so without a professional looking over my shoulder, bless you.
Thank you.
And so without a professional looking over my shoulder, helping out with that, I made a huge mistake, which was getting into this project with zero budget. At the time, I had $10,000 in the bank, and I went to one of my private lenders, my father, who lent me money to go to the 3-day seminar. And he said, "Hey, Justin, how much are you going to spend on this property?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to spend 10,000 because I don't have $11,000 in the bank, right? I could only spend $10,000." Ultimately, I wound up spending $24,000 on repairs, right? Because I was so unprepared for the project. And thankfully, like, things fell into place. I was able to have the money, not from my dad, and get through the project. But that's one of the biggest differences, I think. When you're working with a hard money lender, you're working with a professional in the industry who's familiar with what you're trying to do, right? They understand investing, they understand fix and flips, they understand the moving parts, they understand rentals and comping rents and understanding tenants and property managers. And so it's a trusted third party that you can ask questions of, right? You're going to have someone reviewing your scope of work. You're going to have someone requiring you to have a scope of work, right? If I worked with a hard money lender, honestly, I probably never would have done that deal. Pam, I think maybe you've seen it. I've given a presentation I put together where I go over like the top 5 major things I screwed up on that, and touch on probably 8 or 10 of the smaller points that I screwed up on that project. Because, Monday morning quarterbacking, I made so many mistakes on that first project. And thankfully, I was able to get out of it and be successful and learn a lot from it. And so here I am, almost 15 years later, still, in the industry and making money at it. And thankfully, haven't lost money since. But yes, I lost money on that deal. But yeah, if I worked with a hard money lender, I probably never would have done that deal to begin with, because there were so many errors I was making up front. And that's one of the things that you can get when you're working with a hard money lender, is someone looking over your shoulder, making sure you're doing the right things, you're thinking about the right stuff.
And then from kind of a return on investment, right? So, one of the values of doing hard money is what you're describing, right? Someone in the industry, someone looking over your shoulder, someone looking at, is this really a good deal? Are you budgeting the right amount of money, time, all of that? And then, from a kind of the loan product itself, a conventional loan versus hard money loan, one of the things that you mentioned is, being able to actually take out a larger loan. So being able to cover the cost and cover the expenses and all of that. Is there other differences from kind of the interest rates and the time period, adjusting that in this that's more favorable for your return on what you're looking for?
Yeah. So some people would say it's less favorable, but the costs are radically different. So in a conventional loan, most of the time, we're just talking about interest rate. It's all about interest rates. People recently have been freaking out because the interest rates are no longer 3 or 4%. Now they're 6 or 7%. And people are panicking, right? But when you look at the hard money world, our interest rates are potentially double-digit interest rates, 10, 12, 15, 18% interest. But the difference is, with a conventional loan, we're planning that interest rate for the next 30 years, right? But when we're talking hard money, we're talking less than 12 months, right? So it's radically different. Conventional loan, we always talk about PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. That's what your mortgage payment is, right? So it covers 4 different things: the principal of the loan, interest on the loan, and then escrows for taxes and insurance. But when we're talking to hard money lenders, these are typically interest only loans. So if somebody says the interest is 12%, we're taking your loan amount times 12%, right? And then dividing it by 12 months to figure out your monthly payment, right? It's a very simple interest. In that case, it would be 1% per month, right? 12% interest, 12 months, 1% per month. So very easy to calculate. And potentially, depending on which way you look at it, we're kind of just splitting hairs, because the loan is such a short-term loan. The interest rate is higher. Maybe the payment would have been higher, but it's so short-term. It's just a means to an end. How can I get into the project with less money down, have that third party looking over my shoulder, making sure I'm doing a good deal, and hopefully get out of it in the right way, and either as a fix and flip, make a profit when I sell it, or as a rental property, refinance it into the long-term loan. And now I have a fully fixed up cash flowing property.
So I loved kind of some of the points that you made there, because the idea is you're able to leverage that capital and really do the math and see the return that you can get versus kind of the conventional. Do you come across clients and kind of some of the deals that you're doing where it's multiple people going on in on the project? And how does that change the dynamic when you're working with people?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I'm working on a deal right now where there's four principal borrowers, four clients, I guess, of mine. So there's a few different things. Generally, one of them is going to be the point person. So if I was somebody partnering with other investors and I'm going to present myself to a hard money lender, I would want us to have decided who's going to be the point person. Maybe the point person who handles the financing. Maybe somebody else is going to be the point person when it comes to the construction and the repairs. But one point of contact, I think, is a good thing to have, because otherwise I'm chasing down four different people, different personalities, four different travel schedules, which on my side, that's okay. That's part of the business. But from the borrowers, from the clients, from the investor standpoint, I think everything is just much more efficient to have the one point of contact. But yeah, you can totally have more than one person. When you have multiple people, multiple personalities, probably multiple roles in the project, it might make more sense to organize this instead of just having four people, organize it into some sort of entity, right? Maybe a limited liability company, something like that. Something you could probably help with, right, Pam?
Yeah.
And by doing that, one of the most important things I think in having an entity, an LLC specifically, is having the operating agreement, because the operating agreement spells out everything, right? When things go well and we all make money, our handshake agreement works well, right? We're going to be 50-50, Pam and Justin, and things go great. And so at the end, we split it 50-50. That's great. But almost nothing goes that perfect and smooth, right? We're going to have different responsibilities. We're going to have maybe a capital call where we need an extra 10 grand. Maybe the project gets completely sideways and now it's a loss. And so how do we do that? How do we handle this? And so in the operating agreement, all of that should be spelled out. Who handles what? How do we get more money if we need it? What changes if I have the money and Pam doesn't have the money to move forward in this project, right? How do things change in that? What happens if, I pass away and Pam needs to then take on the project, right? How is that handled? All of this is spelled out in the operating agreement. And so then if something does go south, for some reason, Pam and I don't like each other anymore, we don't have to, fight over all these things. It should all be spelled out in the operating agreement. Of course, so are the profits. But if things don't go perfectly well, it's all spelled out. And so I think when there's multiple people coming together, I think it makes a lot of sense to maybe form a new entity. Could be a single purpose entity. The whole reason is to do this one fix and flip. We can call it PJ LLC, right? Pam and Justin LLC. And the whole reason of this, which is spelled out in the operating agreement, is to do a fix and flip on 123 Main Street, right? And that's totally fine. And if Pam and Justin get along well, maybe we create another LLC or we modify the existing one to do more deals together. But that way, everything is very clear. When it's just Pam and Justin and we're going to partner and we're going to go on a deal together, sometimes things can get blurry and confusing, and of course, messy. So, taking those extra steps can be really important when you're doing that.
One thing that you mentioned is kind of the return on your investment, right? When we're evaluating a deal and you're using a hard money lender, you're going to be evaluating what the resell is. You're going to be looking for budget for repairs. You're going to be working with someone like you that's going to be looking over the shoulder. Is there like a general rule of thumb of kind of that percentage or the rate of return that you like to see on the deals when you're evaluating it? Someone comes to you and they kind of pitch you a deal for the hard money and you're like, there really isn't that great of a margin on this. What is that margin? What's that type of return that you're looking for to say, hey, I think this is a good deal. You have something.
Yeah, that's a great question, Pam. And that's certainly something that Pine Financial does that I think a lot of other lenders don't, right? They're maybe similar to that conventional lender that I had on my first deal, which was, will they qualify for the deal? Can we get the loan closed? And then, pat you on the back and wish you luck. So something that Pine Financial does is we do that extra diligence. We dive a little bit deeper. We want to see the profitability. I was just talking to somebody earlier today who's working on a new construction project. They're looking at building a couple townhomes and they're calling around and shopping to different lenders, hard money, private money, banks, to see what is going to be the best financing for them. And they told me, like, Justin, you're the only one who actually took the time to go through this and actually help me understand what this looks like and what the profitability is. And and help paint that picture for me. So yeah, I think that's super important to have, again, that person looking over your shoulder, holding your hand to some extent and making sure you're getting into a good deal. But of course, what constitutes a good deal? So it depends, right? There is no one right answer. I think the old standby people would say is you shouldn't do a fix and flip if you're going to make less than $20,000 or $25,000 in profit, which I think is a great rule of thumb. But if you're doing a fix and flip on a $750,000 single family home in Denver, $25,000 could be gone in one price change, right? Right now, with this changing economic environment, the changing real estate market, we may list it at 750. We don't get any buyers in the first 2 weeks, so we need to drop our price. What's going to incentivize somebody to buy our property? Going from 750 to 745, a $5,000 price drop? Probably not, right? It has to be significant enough for somebody to catch their eye. So going from 750 to 725 seemingly is not that big of a price adjustment. But if our profit margin was 25,000, that's gone, right? We're actually losing money now because we held the property 2 extra weeks to figure that out, right? So now we have a $25,000 price drop plus the 2 weeks of extra holding time. Now we're losing money. And that's if everything else on the project went well. So what some people will look at is they want to make 10% of the sale price, 10% of the ARV. So if I'm selling a $750,000 property, I want to make $75,000. Okay, right? That may work for them. Some people want to make $1 in profit for every $1 spent on construction. So if this was a really big remodel to make it worth $750,000, they had to spend $100,000 in construction. Well, then that investor wants to make $100,000 in profit, right? A lot of time and effort and, watching and managing of the contractors and other moving parts might be worth more to them, right? They feel like they should be rewarded better for that. And I have no problem with that. So in that case, they would want to make $100,000 in profit. Okay. So there's these different models that people will look at in that regard, all of which I think make a lot of sense. But make sure that if you're just doing a small little cosmetic condo for, $200,000, yeah, maybe that $20,000 to $25,000 makes sense. But if you're doing much higher price points, much larger and elaborate remodels, that you're adjusting that scale to really account for the time it's going to take and any potential hiccups, right? Repair budget of $100,000, change orders are going to be pretty big. So make sure you have enough margin to accept that. Same thing with price changes if something happens in the market.
That's super helpful. And I think, so my background's in civil engineering and I worked on big construction projects. And what I learned in the big construction project world is like nothing goes as scheduled and everything is out of budget, right? The bigger the project, the more risk and chaos and things like that. In the real estate investor world, in the world that you're in, you're doing bigger projects, you're doing smaller projects. And it seems like what I'm hearing from you is the larger the deal, the more you need to have that margin of error, the more you need to be kind of really buckling in on those numbers and working with a trusted professional. And I guess my question to you from that is, does hard money make more sense when we're talking about larger projects versus small? Like what size deal does it really make sense to work with someone like you and invest the money and really have the time versus, just pulling your own cash out or working with, private equity?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of people, when they hear those higher interest rates, they get scared away, right? Like why would anybody do a multi-million dollar new construction project that's going to take months and months and months and be paying 12% interest or whatever it may be, right? That makes no sense when I can just go to a bank and get it for 6% interest. Well, that person I was talking to who is looking at doing these duplexes potentially will have no money down with the hard money loan, right? That is something where we might be able to cover all of his purchase price and all of the construction on this project. But if he went to a bank, he would have hundreds of thousands of dollars out of pocket because I'm looking at the ARV. I'm doing a loan to value, an LTV based on, what value, the ARV, the after repair value. So I'm looking at what will he sell the property for after it's all fixed and beautiful and a percentage of that. Whereas banks will look at what are your costs and they'll lend a percentage of that. So no matter what, right, your costs are your costs, the purchase price, the construction, lending a percentage of that means you have to have skin in the game. You're going to put money into it. So if it's a really good deal, if there is definitely some good margin there, that's certainly a reason to be looking at hard money. If you don't have on these very large projects, hundreds of thousands of dollars to be putting into the project, that could be a reason to come to hard money. If you know you're going to move quickly, hard money can be a great option. If you know that you're buying a property that's shovel ready, permits are already in hand, or maybe you just did a project just like this, and so the plans are all put together, just maybe some fine tuning for your lot, and then you're right into submitting to the city to get your permit. You're going to move faster on the project. So that could be one of the reasons. Now, there is definitely going to be that tipping point where if you're going to hold this thing for 24, 36 months, maybe it does make more sense to go to a bank or something like that, because there's going to be that tipping point where the hard money does add up. And you're going to have so much in payments out of pocket that maybe now it would have made more sense to just have more money out of pocket up front with a bank. And now that lower interest rate makes more sense. So that's something to be thinking about and playing around with. Certainly something that we can help out with, at least looking at the interest carry on the hard money side and calculating what is this going to look like. So just playing around and understanding, right? Again, hard money isn't the end all be all, but it can be a great tool. So depending on the situation, it's certainly worth making that phone call, getting to know your hard money lender, and running through some different scenarios to see which really might make more sense.
And you mentioned kind of at the beginning of our time, you kind of mentioned, if you need it for like a couple months. And then now we're talking, obviously a bigger project can never be done in a couple months. So it sounds like there is kind of this window where, hard money could be a good option if it's under 14, 18 months, depending on the size of the project, maybe a shorter time frame for smaller projects. Is that kind of what you, with your experience, kind of with timeframes?
Yeah. So generally speaking, our loans are 9 months long for residential projects. So fix and flips, the BRRRR strategy, we're going to buy, fix, and then refinance a rental property. Our loans are 9 months long, and there's no prepayment penalties. And so that's really important to understand, because if some of these rental properties may only need $15,000, $20,000 of low end cosmetic work to get it rent ready, and you're going to start that construction on day one. So you may have that construction done in 30, 45 days. And so you don't want to have any kind of minimum interest. You don't want to have 6 months of payments or interest required if you could potentially be refinancing in 45 days, right? Because that's going to cost you more money and hurt the returns on your deal. So having no prepayment penalties means you're not going to have any penalties, no extra fees or anything like that, if you pay us off sooner than later. So we've had clients come and refinance us in 2 weeks, right? We were more of a bridge, a way to help them get into the project before that longer term or other financing they were working on was able to come in and be in play. So we help them close on the deal, get into the property, and then very soon after they refinance out of us. 2 weeks of interest, right? It doesn't matter what the interest rate is at that point, because we were able to get you into the deal. So that may be something there. But on these larger projects, on the commercial stuff, on those big new construction projects, typically what we'll do is we'll start off at 12 months there, just because we know the permitting process could take longer. Getting architecturals done could take longer. Construction could take longer. So on those, we generally start at 12 months, but depending on the actual project and what you're planning, we could do 15, 18 months, again, with no prepayment penalties in case things go really well and you're done sooner than later. That's totally fine with us. We're happy to chat through it and see what your plan is and what if you've done these projects before, historically, what it's looked like, to make sure that we're not getting you into a situation 9 months in where we knew it was going to take 12 to 13 months, that we're not now having to negotiate an extension at 9 months. We can just plan ahead and be prepared for that up front.
What, you mentioned, having these LLC operating agreements with partners in case things go south. What are the options when things go south, right? Obviously, if someone works with you, they're doing the due diligence, they're giving the right contingencies. The hope is things don't go south, right? But when things go south, what are their options with working with you? How do you guys help support people through those types of things? Or does it never happen, right?
Yeah. So we always try to work with our clients, right? It's literally like our tagline. We work together so you succeed. But let's jump to the other side. Worst case scenario is we foreclose, right? If you default on a mortgage in one way or another, then the repercussions is foreclosure, right? But that's not what we want, right? We want to see our clients be successful. We want to help them in whatever way we can so that hopefully they get out of the project, whether it was profitable or not, but then they go on to their next project, right? Like with mine, my first project was not profitable, but I went on to the next project and, eventually started seeing some success. So there's lots of different ways because there's lots of different scenarios, right? There's no one size fits all when it comes to, things that happen in real estate. So, kind of the catch-all could be you have a contractor that disappears on you in the middle of the night, right? Runs off with some cash. So now you're maybe tight on funds and you're falling behind on your time. So you're telling us and you're keeping us in the loop. Hey, this guy left. I got to get a new contractor. And then, hey, Justin, okay, I got a new contractor. Things are up and running. We're doing okay. You get through the project. We're pushing, maybe this is like a fix and flip. So maybe in month 8, you're finally done with the project. Now it goes on the market. You're hoping you priced it right and you get a quick contract. You do. And it goes under contract the first weekend. And that's awesome. And so now you're planning on being out of the project right at 9 months, which is how long the loan is. But then, of course, what happens? The buyer gets cold feet. They walk away. Now you got to go back on the market. You're definitely going to be past 9 months, right? And any kind of these scenarios mix and match these different things, but they can all happen, and they do happen, right? Hopefully not all together on the same project, but sometimes that happens. So as long as you're talking to us and letting us know what's going on, we're in the loop, right? We're definitely going to be helping you out. So the low-hanging fruit is to give you an extension. So the loan was 9 months. You're right at 9 months. Well, we'll give you an extension. So for us at Pine Financial, our documents say that we'll charge 1 point, which is 1% of the loan amount, for every 30-day extension, and the interest would go up to 18%. But usually the reality is we give like a 3-month extension to make sure you have plenty of time to get through it. We probably will charge 1 point for that, and the interest will stay the same. We're not going to change the interest. So that's what really winds up happening. And so if there's other things that are going on and other projects that may be getting caught up, just keep talking to us, keep your lender involved. 1, we may have a way to solve the problem. 2, maybe we can make a referral to help you out. 3, maybe we can put eyes on the property and brainstorm ways to get through whatever you got going on. So the more you talk to us, the more we can try and help, or at least be understanding.
That's super helpful. And I think, when investors are looking at other hard money lenders besides you, what are some things or things that when they're looking at for you, what are some things that they should be really looking for? What should they be if they're shopping around for a good hard money lender? What are some questions they should ask?
Yeah. So not every hard money lender is made the same, right? We're all trying to find that slight edge that will differentiate us, right? I've talked a couple times about how we do no money down deals. And that's one of our claims to fame. But everyone will try to have their way of being a shiny object, right? To catch your attention, as opposed to the conventional world where everybody's got the same rate. Everybody's got 30 years, right? So it's really maybe who and who answers the phone, right? But with the hard money, you got to then, just because you see these different shiny objects, now you have to differentiate what actually is going to work best for me in my scenario. So one of the first questions I would recommend somebody ask is, I've got a project in X location. Do you lend there? Because there are some national lenders that will lend everywhere. There's some lenders that are very, very specific. So you want to make sure that the lender you're talking to will even cover, because before you get into a 30-minute conversation about the ins and outs and all the nuances and the math, right? If they can't even cover your territory, you just wasted a whole bunch of time. So can they lend wherever you are?
And I know you can lend in Colorado, but you also can lend in other states. What are those states again?
Yeah, that's right. So we are in Colorado. We are in Minnesota. We are in Wisconsin. And then we do some in the Washington, D.C. area. So Virginia and Maryland and that area there. So make sure that you can lend where your lender will lend where your project is. One of the next things is you want to make sure that they're a direct lender, or maybe not make sure they're a direct lender, but understand who you're talking to. So a direct lender is a lender who has control over the money and the decisions, as opposed to a broker, right? A broker may say, give you some lip service, say, yeah, we can do this. But then they take your information and then they go shop it around to different lenders. And so they don't necessarily have that control. Now that may give you more options, which could be a good thing, But when you have a question or they find some red flag or potential red flag, right? How long does it take to figure that out? What's the telephone game going to look like before it actually gets back to you? How much time do you lose in that scenario? As opposed to working with a direct lender, you know that they have the money, they make the decisions. So if a red flag arises, we can then handle it right away, right? So that's something. How fast can they close, right? Because usually investors, one of the ways we're getting deals under contract is we move fast, right? We can close quickly. So how quickly can your lender close? Are they going to require an appraisal? If so, how long will the appraisal take, right? If not, if they don't need an appraisal, well, does that save us any time? Can we close in a couple of days? Does it take weeks? Is it going to be months? What does that look like? So then obviously, if you're already under contract, well, I have 2 weeks to close, but you need an appraisal. It's going to take 4 weeks. Well, then that's not going to work for me, right? So, or I have not made an offer yet. I'm going to make an offer. I like this loan, and you only need 7 days to close. Well, I can make an offer saying I'm going to close in 10 days. That should be plenty of time, right? And so understanding what your lender can do can help you craft a better offer.
That's amazing. And I think one of the things that's so helpful about what you've shared with us is those kind of differentiators your group has. Like you're able to have that control, be that direct contact, really be upfront on timeline, and then give that additional service. What is the best way for people to get a hold of you, Justin, if they wanted to work with you and chat with you about their project?
Yeah, probably the best way is email. Just shoot me an email. I'm constantly in front of Outlook. It's linked to my cell phone. It's just nonstop. But so my email address is justin@pinefinancialgroup.com.
So I will include that in the show notes as well as the information for your website. And then you have a really great YouTube channel. I was looking at it this morning, so many great resources as well. So I definitely recommend people watch that. My final question that I ask everyone who does the podcast, Justin, what is your legacy? What is the legacy you're creating?
Yeah, so I think, part of it um is the relationships, is the helping and the handholding in the real estate community. When I got started, maybe not before that first deal, but as I was in that first deal and for every day since then, the real estate community has been fantastic for me, helping me. I wouldn't be where I am without countless people helping me out, whether it's through paid mentors or in coaches or networking groups or just somebody, that I meet who happens to be in real estate, and we just have conversations and they offer advice and thoughts and feedback. So for me, probably, giving back to the real estate investor community. And so I can do that in a couple ways, through Pine Financial. Yes, it's a loan and there's, I make money doing it, but I love spending the time with the clients on the phone. For years, everybody in the office would look at me, they could have a conversation of 5-10 minutes and I'm on the phone for 20, 30, 40 minutes with a client, because we're really diving into what's going on, the moving parts, what they want to do with their business. And I'm really trying to help them and understand what they're doing to give them the best advice. We do an event once a year in Denver and once a year in Minnesota. We call it the Real Estate Investors Success Summit. And it's an all-day educational, no sales pitch event. And if you've been around real estate investing for a while and the events, that a no sales pitch event is kind of a big deal. So that's something we do, right? It costs a couple bucks. I think in Denver it was like $39 this past month, but relatively speaking, it's cheap and it's all local folks giving great, timely advice. So we do a lot of that. I do a little bit of coaching and consulting. So if people really need that one-on-one help and not necessarily related to hard money lending, I do that. And then just in general, just when I go out to the meetup groups and the RIAs and all the different events, I'd like to spend time and get to know people and sit at the tables and have the conversations. And I'm usually one of the last people to leave because I'm in these conversations with different people, just trying to help them get started or help them get to the next level.
That's amazing, Justin. Thanks for sharing that. I know for me, I had the privilege of seeing you on stage at the Success Summit. You're an amazing speaker. That was why I really wanted to have you on the podcast today. So definitely mark your calendar. I know it's in the fall every year to attend and take a look at everything, all the other content Justin has. It's so useful. Thank you so much for being on today, Justin.
Pam, thank you so much. Really appreciate the time today.
If you need an updated will, trust, or estate plan and you are a Colorado resident, we would love to be your estate planning law firm. Give us a call at 720-706-0036 to schedule your complimentary 15-minute call. You can also directly schedule at lawmother.com/go. If you liked this episode and you want to learn more, you should definitely check out my international best-selling book, Legally Ever After. It's available on Amazon as both an ebook, a paperback, and an audio version. And if you'd like a free chapter, head over to lawmother.com/LEA.